Maureen, can you hear us? All right, good. Thank you. Can we hear you?
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Thank you. Hello and welcome to the City of Cedar Falls Planning and Zoning Commission meeting for Wednesday, October 9th of 2024. I call this meeting to order. Can I get a roll call, please?
Alberhaski,
Here.
Grebovich,
Here.
Hartley,
Here.
Henderson,
Here.
Johnson,
Here.
Moser,
Here.
Sorensen,
Here.
Stallnaker,
Here.
Watkins. We have one absent tonight.
All right, thank you. First agenda item is approval of minutes from our last meeting. Do we have any discussion or a motion on that?
I would make a motion to approve.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those
Aye.
opposed? All right, that carries. This is time of the meeting for any public comment for anything that is not on the agenda tonight. And if there's anything you'd like to speak to, I don't see anyone. All right, we will move on. There's no old business in this meeting, just new business.
Chair
Our first,
Hartley, I just have one correction to the agenda. I just wanted to note a typo on the agenda for the fifth item. It says discuss and set a public hearing for October 9th. That should be set a public hearing for October 23rd. So
okay,
that's just a
October
typo.
23rd.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Karen. All right, for new business, our first agenda item is easement vacation, utility easement at 1907 Valley High Drive. And JD, are you taking that?
I will take
Oh,
that.
Chris is taking that, thank you.
Yes, thank you, commissioners. Good to see you this evening. James and Nicolette Wilson submitted a request to vacate a 5-foot wide utility easement that divides their property at 1907 Valley High Drive, which is located at the southeast corner of Dena Drive and Valley High Drive. The Wilsons would like to construct a raised deck over the utility easement, so I have requested that it be vacated as there are no utilities running through this easement. As you see up on the screen, this is another depiction of their property from the Briarwood Hills 7th edition plat. The Wilsons purchased lot 75 of the 6th edition in 2004, and that lot was along the edge of the subdivision. As with many subdivisions, there's a 5-foot utility easement established along the edge of the plat in case there was a need to run utilities as the area further developed. The Wilsons purchased the abutting lot, Briarwood Hills 7th edition lot 28 in 2007, and the Wilsons combined the two lots under the address 1907 Valley High Drive. In considering an easement vacation, several factors are reviewed. Is the easement needed for public use? And the answer to that is no. The city has no public use or purpose for the easement. Is the easement needed for access to other easements or utility lines? No. Vacating this easement will not impact access to easements or utilities located on or adjacent to the owner's property. CFU and the city do not anticipate any future need either to locate utilities in the easement. And also, are there any utilities within the easement that will need to be retained? The City of Cedar Falls and CFU do not have utilities located within the easement. The owners of the property are responsible for confirming that there are no private utilities within the easement, just as a separate matter. So with that, staff recommends approval of this case, a request to vacate the 5-foot utility easement at 1907 Valley High Drive. I'm here if you have any questions.
Thank you, Chris. Does any commission have questions for staff? Is there any public input on this agenda item? Bring it back to commission. This is pretty straightforward.
I would make a motion to approve, move to council.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Roll call vote on this, please.
Alberhaski,
Aye.
Grebovich,
Aye.
Hartley,
Aye.
Henderson,
Aye.
Johnson,
Aye.
Moser,
Aye.
Sorensen,
Aye.
Stallnaker.
Aye.
And we'll move on to council.
All right, thank you. The next agenda item tonight is PC2 District Site Plan Amendment of 924 West Viking Road. And JD will have that. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Good evening, Commissioners. Good evening, everyone. This is the PC2 District Site Plan Amendment for 924 West Viking Road. This site is located south of West Viking and just north of the industrial park. The proposal here is to amend the PC2 District Site Plan that was already the reason why we are doing this is there was a city council approves amendment to this PC2 master plan to develop a practice soccer field, as you can see on the screen. At that time, back in July, it was noted that the construction of this practice soccer field will be with minimal grading. However, the applicant is requesting to allow an amendment to accept the already constructed retaining wall to support a level soccer field. So it was identified by the applicant that during construction of this level practice field, during construction of the soccer field, there was a need of creating a 9 feet high retaining wall in order to have a level practice field and to ensure that this gradual slope is maintained. So there was a need, which is why they were able to create that, which was not according to the approved plan. So to bring the plan or site into compliance with city code, this is an amendment requesting to accept the existing retaining wall that they have built. In addition, the applicant will be adding a 42-inch guardrail or fence around the proposed retaining wall, which will be for the building safety and to comply with building code. And then applicant will also be adding 15 Austrian pines just between the fence and the retaining wall to create more substantial buffer from adjacent property. With that, the staff recommends approval of this amendment to allow an already constructed retaining wall, adding fence and landscaping buffer to bring the site into compliance, subject to any comments by PNC. So, thank you.
All right, thank you. Any questions for staff? The way I understand it, that we approved this once and then the developer just added to it, and so, which is not in code, so we have to add or change it to accommodate their adding the retaining wall, which makes sense. I mean, it's there. I understand the purpose for it. Question, comments, motion?
I'll make a motion to approve.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. Could I get a roll call vote on that, please?
Alberhasky,
Aye.
Rubovich,
Aye.
Hartley,
Aye.
Henderson,
Aye.
Johnson,
Aye.
Moser,
Aye.
Sorensen,
Aye.
Stallnaker.
Aye.
Okay.
All right, thank you. The next agenda item tonight is a RP District Master Plan Amendment and Site Plan for the Cedar Falls Bible Conference Building Addition.
Yep, that would be me as well.
JD
Thank you.
has that tonight. Thank you.
So yes, this is another case we have tonight. It's a RP District Master Plan Amendment and Site Plan for Cedar Falls Bible Conference Building Addition. I'd like to start where this area is. It's just north of Greenwood Cemetery and it's the Cedar Falls Bible Conference campus, or it's also known as Riverview Conference. So the reason or the proposal here is to amend the RP master plan that was approved back in 1987 to reflect existing development and also proposed new building addition on site. Another piece of this proposal is also to approve a site plan for the new 6,500 square feet event center building addition, associated parking, and stormwater detention basin on the site. So just a bit of background on what has happened on this property so far. This parcel is part of Riverview Park subdivision that was platted back in 1920. The property was then rezoned from R2 Residence District to RP District in 1987 with a master plan and a developmental procedure agreement. On your screen to the right, you can see the plan that was approved back in 1987. It seems many of the anticipated changes that were on this master plan have not been realized, and site has remained mostly unchanged today. So with that, I think, one second. Sorry, yep. So with that, the proposal here is to amend the RP master plan. So this is the new proposed master plan by the applicant that will reflect what is existing development out there, and also the proposed new building that is highlighted in red is the new building for the new event hall. And staff notes that any significant future development on the campus will require another amendment and approval of amendment of a master plan and a site plan review process through planning and zoning and city council. At this time, the applicant has indicated that there are no plans as of today that can be presented on a master plan, but they understand the need to come back to the process to amend the plan when they make future development to the site. The second piece of this is the new 6,500 square feet building addition that will be used for an event hall. So as you can see on your site plan, the black boundary outlines the new building addition, which will be just placed next to the just east of the worship center building, which is the major building on the campus on Elm Street. So that's the location of the building. Regarding the parking, as per code, 64 stalls would be required for this building addition. An applicant is proposing 65 stalls, including 10 ADA stalls. 10 ADA stalls, including some parking, will be available just south of the building as highlighted in the red boundary. However, the rest of the parking areas will be scattered around the campus. We did attach a parking exhibit that shows where the parking spaces are scattered along the campus. That was included in the packet. The reason for that was to allow more dispersed management of stormwater runoff into the excessive green fields that are on the site. And the last piece is any new development exceeding 5,000 square feet in area requires on-site stormwater management. So applicant is proposing a stormwater detention basin that will be just north of the proposed new building addition, as highlighted in blue. And that would manage the runoff from the new addition, as well as will capture some of the runoff from the existing worship center building to the west. The proposed building design would be sided with a combination of dark and light colored LP boards. As you can see a rendering on your screen to the right. There are two colored LP boards and batten finish, and entire building will be topped with metal coping. With that, staff has reviewed the proposed amendment to the RP master plan and detailed site plan for the 6,500 square feet building addition for the event hall for Cedar Falls Bible Conference, and recommends approval, subject to any comments and directions specified by Planning and Zoning Commission. I'm here to answer any questions, as well as the applicant is here. So thank you.
Thank you, JD. Does Commission have any questions for staff?
With the parking arrangement looks kind of scattered and non-traditional. Or some of the maximum walking distances from some of those parking spots to the event center?
Good question. I am not aware about it, but maybe applicant can share some information on that.
Okay. Any more questions?
I'm also wondering about, on a parking related note, thinking about, I've been back there before and the roads are really narrow. How do you determine if they can accommodate 250 people if there is a large event there?
I think the applicant would have some answers to that because they have pretty large events there now, so they can respond to that question.
All right. Is the applicant here tonight like to speak to this item? Name and address, please.
Sure. Dan Levi, Levi Architecture, 3228 Cedar Heights Drive, Cedar Falls. Dispersed parking question?
Yes, over here.
Sorry.
Just curious.
Sorry, Brent. So it's an unusual site. It's an entire campus. They do currently hold events twice a year that do exceed 600 to 700 people. And what they're doing now is with all of their green space and some gravel areas that are going to be taken care of, they're actually distributing the parking throughout because it's such a minor use. The typical use is the families and individuals that rent the cabins, and they have parking in front of their units. And so that's where we get most of our parking. So one of the challenges with this site is that there is no stormwater utility service to this campus. It sits up on the hill, and we have no stormwater that comes all the way up to the property. So what the city was willing to look at, city staff was, I should say, creatively, was dispersing our parking throughout the campus and doing what they do now, which is they have carts and they bus people, if you will, throughout. So when we have large events, we're parking a little further away, and then we're bringing people in because we don't have that kind of a campus setup with the existing roads and cabins. So this is going to continue that. We're dispersing the parking to better serve 95% of the time of how the campus is utilized in terms of vehicular and pedestrian traffic. And then when we do have large events, it'll be the responsibility of the event to be able to bus those individuals, except for the ADA. That's why we have all of the new ADA right up next to the existing event hall, as well as the addition, which only holds about 250 people.
I think that answered my question too. Thank you.
Great.
Any more questions for the applicant? Anything more you'd like to add?
I would like to say that all three staff members sitting here tonight were very patient, very helpful in this process. We've been involved with this project for well over 2 or 3 years now, and they have been creative, they have been cooperative, communicative with us and the client as this project has shifted gears on multiple occasions and has eventually come to this point. So they should be commended on their willingness to work with this client in a very unusual, very challenging site.
Okay, thank you. Any more questions or further discussion? Okay, thank you very much. Anyone from the public like to speak to this item? Please come to the podium and name and address, please.
Hi, my name is Cody Heyman. I live at 625 Baker Drive. And currently when the event center has their larger events, there's the parking, the way that it's distributed now, generally takes up both sides of the road along North Division and South Park. And when those events are had, it's nearly impossible to traverse those roads. With the way that the stop signs are set up as well, there'll be a line of cars behind them, and then it's very nice to have pleasant drivers, but some of them try to be Iowanized, and they stop when they don't have a stop sign. And that creates a bottleneck that just persists for what feels like a long time. And having a larger event space with more people involved, my concern would be that the parking grows worse than what it is, because the way that it is now, when they have those larger events, it's a danger right now. And then on top of the parking, the people that do live on that corner up there, I don't know how they get into their driveways sometimes. And just the way that it is, it's not a very good setup as it is now. So that was just a concern that I had. And I think that some of that problem might be alleviated just by having like maybe some no parking signs on one side of the road so that there's not traffic along both sides of the road that turns it into a one-lane street, basically.
Did I remember correctly that that street is turned into a one-way during those events? Does that still happen, or?
I'm not aware of that. I haven't seen
used
it
to
like
happen. I know that, I remember years ago, they made those streets one-way during those events.
that. If that's how it is, I haven't seen signs posted
Okay.
indicating that it's a one-way only.
It's not that way now?
No.
Okay.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Anyone else from the public like to speak to this item? Yeah, you can come up.
Specifically addressing the comment that was made about making a larger center. This project is not increasing the occupant load of the existing center. There's still limits as to how many people they can put in that building. By code, this building, the way it is constructed, is completely separate from a code standpoint. They simply touch. It's a different type of event center. To house only 250, not the 600 or 700 that use the event center. There's actually only a small window and a single door separating the two. Otherwise, it's a solid wall. So we're not going to be able to increase the number of people that attend the event in that center. So it's certainly not alleviating the existing condition, and I have attended events there. I have not seen one-way signs posted either, but we're not exacerbating the problem that they do have right now.
Yes. Now, is there any additional parking that's created in this?
We're creating new paved parking.
it's existing
We're
parking.
utilizing some areas that may not entirely be used for parking, but I would not go so far as to say that we're going very far in alleviating the existing issues that they have when they do have very large events.
Okay.
I would not say that.
Okay, all right, thank you.
For some of the larger events, like when there are events at UNI, we have, public safety come and help direct traffic. Is that something that can be a recommendation when these events are happening, or how does that work exactly?
Well, that's a good question. And this is a private entity, and that's something maybe they should take into account. And certainly something we could mention, that there is maybe some issues. They would have to notify the city, of course, about those events, because otherwise we wouldn't know that they were holding them. Mhm.
All right, any other questions and comments? I mean, I do see this as a nice improvement for their campus, and it creates better parking, maybe not necessarily additional parking. So I do support their efforts, even though I understand it's got an impact on the neighborhood. But from what I understand, that's only a couple times in a calendar year that they're dealing with that. And I would think it would be only over a weekend versus many weeks at a time, but I see this as a positive move for them.
Yeah, I would make a motion to approve.
I'll second that motion.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Need a roll call vote on that, please.
Alberhaski,
Aye.
Grebovich,
Aye.
Hartley,
Aye.
Henderson,
Aye.
Johnson,
Aye.
Moser,
Aye.
Sorensen,
Aye.
Stallnaker.
Aye.
Okay.
All right, that carries. All right, we have two more agenda items tonight, and those agenda items are talking about the same area. One is for rezoning the land, and then the second item would be for its proposed purpose for the rezoning. So I think staff is going to present that as one item tonight, or present it together so that you get the full picture of the content before we open it up for discussion amongst the commission and open up for discussion amongst the public. But we are glad you're here tonight to speak to this item. So I will hand it over to Tom, has the floor now, and can present the rezoning of 2.68 acres located south of First Street and 350 feet east of Winding Ridges Estates.
Thank you. Yes, as stated, as part of the rezoning for this, there has to be a site plan, but because they're combining it with want to combine it with what's already RP, it'll be, this site's use will be included in the RP amendment as opposed to just the rezoning. So this property currently is zoned A1 agriculture. It's been in the city since 1971. It was brought in and zoned A1 agriculture. It's surrounded by all different types of residential and commercial. In 2005, Thunder Ridge Development Corporation purchased this property from Fluidine, and the current owners, Emmy Associates, have had the property since 2019. The property to the south and west of this property is also owned by Emmy Associates, and the southern property has been zoned RP Planned Residence District since 1994. So looking at the future land use and overlaid with zoning, you'll see that the particular site and the site that's already RP are zoned for medium-density residential. Medium-density residential allows up anywhere from, it says states 4 to 12 units per acre. This proposal is for approximately 11.2 units per acre. The previous plan had a higher density at 14.2. This will reduce not only the density of the property, but also the number of buildings. You see to the east is the S1, which is the Thunder Ridge Shopping Mall. This site is in an area that has access to public service. However, a subdivision will be necessary to extend water and sewer into the site. There is water up along First Street and a little bit of sewer to the northwest of this site. The rezoning does not, the property currently does not have access as well. And part of the rezoning requirements is that property have direct access. So again, through this, they'll be required to do a subdivision and establish right-of-way for the Lake Ridge Drive property south to the property line. The property does front on South First Street, and so it has access to the public street. But again, the developer plans to construct an extension of Lake Ridge Drive in order to meet the zoning requirements or the rezoning requirements. However, the proposed alignment of the street is on the property to the east, which they currently own, but because it's on another property, there will have to be accommodations for an easement and the building of the street. Staff mailed letters to the surrounding property owners notifying them of these two requests on September 17th and 19th. Along with this, again, I mentioned the easement plat and agreement will need to be prepared and agreed upon before this rezoning can be set for a public hearing at City Council. A final draft of a development procedures agreement for the RP district, including provisions for the construction of the Lake Ridge Drive extension, will need to be prepared and agreed upon before the rezoning can be set for a public hearing. So the next step basically in this process will be to go ahead and file a subdivision to establish the required right-of-way for this development. And then with that, they'll be able to extend the utilities using that right-of-way like normally would be in a subdivision development. Staff would recommend gathering any comments from the Planning and Zoning Commission and then set a date for a public hearing at the next planned meeting, which is October 23rd. So I'll go on to the next case, which is the RP District Master Plan. As you see here, the entire site, and at the northeast side, you'll see where the previous rezoning request would be incorporated into this site plan. To the west of this is the Winding Ridge Estates subdivision. And then you'll see that to the east is the Thunder Ridge Commercial, and then there's the Thunder Ridge, both senior and regular apartments to the southeast. So here are a couple of examples, and to get them on there, we've got north is facing up. You'll see the original plan had shown just, I don't know if, probably not. The entrance drive was to the southwest portion of the property, and it only had one entrance into the property. And again, it had 9 units, 9 buildings and 216 units. Their proposal is to amend the plan to allow for commercial up at the north end of the property. You can see the red circle, and then to build 7 units, 7 buildings on the site. Some of the site features, they're proposing a 30-foot setback and buffer on the north, which meets the requirements of the RP district. Along First Street, there'll be a 15-foot buffer and setback. Along Lake Ridge Drive, there is a 20-foot buffer and setback, and then along the south property line, which is to the left on the screen, they're proposing a 15-foot buffer. And again, these do all meet the requirements of the RP zoning district. With that, we've looked at the sidewalk and the circulation for pedestrians, and when they bring back a final site plan, which you'll see in review, there's a few items that should be adjusted to get better connection between the public trail along Lake Ridge Drive and into some of the units, and then from some of the units to the other ones. There are 4 amenities, which are gazebos that are replaced. 2 are placed in close to the 3 buildings on the upper left-hand side, and then there's a gazebo that's down close to where the stream corridor is. There's actually 2 placed along there. They'll have both open parking and garages for the use. This site does have a environmentally sensitive area. There is a wetland that's been noted on the site. The developer has worked with the Army Corps of Engineers to develop a mitigation plan, and they have provided that plan to us. It's basically a plan showing that anything that's disturbed, they'll have to replace that through a wetland bank. But there's just 2 small sections of stream where they're crossing it that'll be affected, and then you'll see the purple is actually the wetlands that'll be impacted by the development. And then stormwater detention is shown. You'll see there's a couple of blue areas that are set up for the stormwater detention. And then the Lake Ridge Drive extension, as I mentioned previously, a lot of that, as you can see, is on the property to the east, so they'll have to do the subdivision in order to get access to this site to meet the rezoning requirements, and then to have the site plan development. And with that, they're extending the utilities to the site right now because of what's along the front. They'll need to work to get those into the right-of-way and do some work there. This is just an example of what the units will look like. There'll be 3 stories, and again, in configuration of, I think, 24-unit buildings and 36-unit buildings. And so to summarize, the amendments to the RP plan include refigurating the current layout of the buildings and the drives in order to better address some of the environmentally sensitive features. The previous plan at that time did not show the wetlands, but it did denote that there were some soils that may limit the ability to develop those. The plan is reducing the overall residential density and is providing wider buffer areas and enhanced landscaping to give a good transition between the lower density residential areas to the west and south. Staff has looked at that and kind of made a recommendation to use evergreen screening by the parking lot on the west side and make sure, that it would provide both visual as well as a noise buffer between the properties to the west. And then the same on the south, although the south is zoned RP, but the plan there is for not quite a dense of a development, but there'll be multi-unit. Once Lake Ridge Drive is constructed, the site will have proper access to public streets, particularly West First Street, and then the plans when the PC2 district to the east follows through. I think some of you might have seen a plan where they were extending Whitetail Drive and doing some connections to the Lake Ridge Drive. So I can't speak that those plans are going, but part of the construction plans show that Whitetail Drive will be constructed there. The fire hydrants and the water service will have to be extended. The public portion will be publicly owned, but there'll be a lot of, on this site that the developer will have to take charge of and ownership of. So the next steps to develop the property is there will be that subdivision required to combine this property with the property that is requested to be rezoned from A1 to RP. So they have to combine that in order to make the plan work. And then establish the right-of-way for Lake Ridge Drive, which must be constructed from First Street to the southern boundary of the property prior to the development of the property. The detailed site plans will be required prior to the development on the RP site plan, and these must be reviewed by both the Planning and Zoning Commission and City Council and approved. And the recommendation is to gather comments from Planning and Zoning Commission and to continue the discussion to the next Planning and Zoning Commission meeting on October 23rd to recommend a date for setting a hearing. Oh, and recommend setting a public hearing of October 23rd for this, both the rezoning and this RP case. And I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Okay, thank you very much. Does commission have any questions for staff?
You mentioned whitetail. Is that the one that comes in front of, like, Wildhair?
Yeah, that's the one that starts over off of Magnolia and Thunder Ridge goes by CVS.
Is that part of this project, or you're just saying it's
That is not part of
future
this
layout is
project,
to
but they're,
extend it? Gotcha. As that land gets
they're
developed.
showing a location where that street will connect to Lake Ridge Drive in the future.
Okay.
Okay. Question?
In the site plan amendment from VJ Engineering in July, it mentioned that there was a sanitary sewer leakage. Is that still ongoing, or was that corrected?
It's still ongoing, and that's part of this plan will be to repair
I
that.
don't think the leak is still ongoing. The leak has been addressed.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. All
But
right.
they will have to reconstruct the sewer to serve this development.
Okay.
And I'm sure the engineer for the project can address any questions about that.
Okay, thank you. Any more questions?
I was hoping you could elaborate a little bit about the wetlands. I think you said that they were identified wetlands, but then they buy credits. I'm a little confused on how the buying of credits works compared to having an actual wetland.
It's my understanding that what happens is they buy credits to create a wetland in a spot that may be better natural features for wetlands. There may be more connectivity, more opportunity for wildlife and plant materials. So you're creating a larger, like a reserve, so the wetland bank of better quality wetlands.
So in the applicant will probably tell, there's usually a wetland bank that's already established, and they create high-quality wetlands in a certain spot, and then people are allowed to buy credits to support that bank to mitigate for any disturbance to other wetlands in the area. And the applicant may have some information about exactly where they're buying the credits, which wetland bank they're buying the credits in, and where that's located.
Okay, thank you. Any more questions? Is the petitioner here tonight would like to speak to this item? Name and address, please.
Wendell Upkus with VJ Engineering, 1501 Technology Parkway, Cedar Falls. I'd like to start this out with saying that we've been affiliated with this property through the various owners since sometime in the last century. We actually started in 1996 with the owners at the time that were out of Omaha, and they wanted to build a C-store, and so that's when we started Whitetail Drive and all that. So I know there's a lot of people that would like to get up here and talk tonight, so I'm going to keep my comments basically confined to the wetlands part of it, because I think that's probably where most of the questions are. And yes, we don't know that we have one specific bank that we're going to buy from. There's three types of wetlands on this site. There's the emergent, which is basically our cattails and stuff, and then there's shrub, scrub, and then there's forested wetlands. So I know, I've seen the emails that the environmental people have been in contact with several different mitigation banks, and I'm not sure which one is providing what at this point, but those are all in process. So once things get approved and stuff, then they'll put the money down and actually do that sort of thing. And so, as Mr. Levi said, I want to thank the staff for all their assistance. There's a lot of moving parts in this one, so I guess with that, basically we're simply updating the 1994 plan. Obviously, since 1994, a lot of regulations have changed. In 1994, this was not jurisdictional wetlands according to the Corps. Things change, Supreme Court rulings, all that, so now we abide by the Corps' rulings. Also, the City of Cedar Falls has changed regulations. One of the comments I saw earlier talked about that the City of Cedar Falls requires that wetlands are not disturbed. And then, Tom, do you bring up the slides, or how does that work? Okay.
Yeah, Mr. Lupkus asked us that he had a few slides to show, so we provided those for him.
Okay. So the first part here is from the section of the Cedar Falls Code that protects wetlands. However, it does have a caveat there at the end that if they're lesser quality wetlands or less critical wetlands, that you can mitigate them through the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers. Now, let me go into a little bit of detail of why. Let's go to the graphic of the wetlands. So now, if you look at, like I say, we've been involved with this project for many years. Back in 2011, they were delineated as part of the project that eventually became the Thunder Ridge Senior Housing, which is the big building behind the Fairway store. So there was a delineation done in 2010 and 2011, and that's the darker green expansive area on this wetlands exhibit. So then that building was built, time goes on, and then in 2014, now we have an owner from Kansas City, and they wanted to develop the RP, the apartment project. So another wetlands delineation occurred. But, let me back up a little bit. As part of the Thunder Ridge Senior Apartments, the leaking sewer line or whatever, and I've got an email. I don't know that you're going to be able to read that. I can provide that for if you want to read it between now and next week. But basically, let me read just a little bit of it. I asked basically for a video of the sewer line so we could determine where we needed to replace it in order to build the senior apartments. And the reply from the city was the footage that we have indicates numerous cracks, one of which is escalated into a break and a total collapse last year, which resulted in a sewage overflow that lasted days. Where there are cracks, there's infiltration and generally roots. But just as big a problem as the poor clay pipe itself is the haphazard zigzag lay of the line and those 90-degree bends. We've had debris get caught in manholes trying to make those corners that have plugged us off for more than once. Again, being in such an isolated area, it's hard to get and extremely difficult to service, and usually days before problems are discovered. Sewage overflows are significant and getting even more attention these days from the DNR. So that's why, and I don't know if you can see it on the map, but there was about a 300-foot stretch of sanitary sewer that was replaced in order for us to build the senior housing behind Fairway. Okay, so that was 2011, 12, and then in 2014, the now Kansas City owners wanted to try and get the RP thing going. So another delineation. And I guess we were very suspect because if you look at the configuration of how the original green looked, right when it got past the sewer line, it expanded laterally tremendously. So what we did, along with the delineation, we had the environmental firm put in test wells, various ones downgrade from the stream. And what we found in the report was, and the sampling was sent to the hygienics lab at the University of Iowa, and there was caffeine contained in the groundwater. This was after the repair of the sewer and that sort of thing. So that indicated caffeine is not a naturally occurring substance in nature. So that indicates that that sewer line was leaking into the groundwater and having some contribution to the wetland area. So then we go to the next, after that repair was made, then in 2014 is the little lighter shade green, and you can see how much it shrank from the repair in 2012 or 13 to the delineation in 2014. Probably almost 50%. Okay, so then, then we installed the wells and found that there was still groundwater in there. Okay, then the Kansas City folks ended up selling out to the Me Associates, or actually it was a different change of title there, but so then they said, okay, when we got ready to do the rezoning for the PC2 over there, then we knew that we were going to have to cross the wetlands with Lake Ridge Drive and that sort of thing. So 2019 was another delineation of the wetlands. So the crosshatched area, which kind of shows in purple there, is based on the 2019-2020 delineation. Okay, and as you can see, it's shrunk again. But then as recently as 2020, I contacted the environmental firm again and asked them if they would resample the groundwater, and they did. And so the email here from the environmental guy says, the well from 2013 that had the highest concentration was destroyed. GP3 and the remnants of TM13 were outside of the most recent, but it still had a concentration of 380 parts per trillion, which increased relative to the 2013 monitoring event of 88 parts per trillion. So yes, the sewer line was repaired. As of 2020, there's still caffeine in the groundwater out there, so I'm not an environmental expert. I can't tell you what level of contribution that makes, but if we look at all that together, that's why we have talked to the Corps. The Corps has concurred, and it's actually issued us the development or the permit to go ahead and mitigate that off-site. That was issued June 17th of this year. And like I say, that is the one thing that I think is probably the most distant as far as knowledge. But we've had all the experts in. Actually, over the course of the years, it's been 3 different environmental firms, and they've basically all concurred with the same thing, that we've got an undue influence on what the wetlands are there. So, and that's why we went to the Corps. Oh, and the same guy that looked at it this year with the Corps has been looking at it with us since 2016. Actually, I looking through my files today, in 2016, he got permission to bring his wetland class out there and check it out. So I guess that's the main thing, is I wanted to make sure that everybody understood that this is not just your typical wetlands. This is a unique case, and that's why the Corps has already given us a regional permit to go forward. So with that, like I say, I know there's other people that want to chat, so if there's any questions, either now or at the end, I'd be happy to attempt to answer those.
Okay, thank you. Is there any questions for the petitioner at this point? Okay. All right, I want to open it up to public comment. Seems like there's a big group here tonight to speak. I do want to just put a limit that if you come up with a lot of questions, we can't do a Q&A back and forth with each person here tonight. So if you do have questions, just list them. And when you sit down, staff and the petitioner will try to answer those for you. And then also, when you come up to speak, if you hear your neighbor mention it one time, you don't need to repeat it, just to try to consolidate some of the comments tonight. So otherwise, if there's someone who wants to come up and speak to this item, just need your name and address.
Tom Nagel, 328 Winding Ridge Road. I'm just going to go ahead and, like you said, just list because I got a pretty extensive list, and I don't even know that all these things are necessarily addressable in this form. You know, looking through the packet, one of the things that stood out to me was there's a list, and some of the stuff has been on the screen, but it was things that weren't included in the packet, like the chronological degradation of the wetlands. But there's a traffic study that's mentioned in there from 2020. I'd like to see a copy of it. Have questions regarding if it's a traffic study in 2020, does it have pandemic influences in the traffic that maybe we're not thinking about? Also, thinking about traffic, you know, with the addition of the new high school, I feel like you got Union Road or you got Hudson Road cutting across going to the south. I feel like there's an obvious opportunity for increased traffic on First Street as a result of the new location of the high school. So interest in the traffic study and how that impacts. Obviously, if you're talking 207 apartment units, that's a significant increase in traffic in the area. Along those lines, and I know I'm not sure where this falls, but school district stuff, I mean, Hanson's busting at the seams already. I've had one kid currently in Hanson, one at Holmes, and Hanson's full. It's not to say that school districts can't be shifted and things like that, but again, we're talking about a lot of residences. When you talk about wetlands, you know, there's the discussion about the quality of the wetlands, and I think that's obviously something that's above my knowledge for somebody to assess the quality of the wetlands. But they do still serve a purpose independent of their quality, slowing down infiltration, or aiding in infiltration, filtering the water, slowing down flows. So there's a whole bunch of other things that are going on there with the wetlands, independent of what they're categorized as. With that being said, I think there needs to be consideration for, and I'm sure, you know, there's stormwater and all the things, but man, I haven't seen an exact number on this set of plans, but I know the 2016 plans was 6.6 acres of paving. So obviously, permeability of paving is 0. The permeability of what's there right now is obviously not 0 and significant. And then also I did some light reading with the 2017 Birdsall Watershed Assessment. It's on the city's website. If you read through all that, essentially what's, you know, the stream that's cutting through that property kind of diagonally is the main branch of Birdsall Creek. You know, the western branch of Birdsall Creek kind of funnels in onto on the north side of the highway there. But I don't think it can be lost that it's not just that property that's funneling water into Birdsall Creek. I mean, those are the two main creeks that facilitate drainage of the entire watershed. So we're not talking about just these 15 acres being impacted or my backyard being impacted or whatever it is. It's a much larger area than I think we're giving consideration to. Again, and then, you know, the comments that Wendell highlighted with regards to the city code, you know, there's all that talk in there. The wetlands are of a lesser quality. You know, obviously I'm not in a position to say what quality they are, but they do exist and they do function to at least help with infiltration and other things. In the Birdsall study, there is comments in there about the city's comprehensive plan, and, you know, and this is direct quote, currently 3 main goals established in the comprehensive plan. It's the 2012 comprehensive plan. As far as surface water within the city limits, they want to be able to infiltrate the rainfall from every 1.25 inch event, reduce sediment loading by 30%, and then maintain existing habitats or improve damaged habitats. So, or improve damaged habitats by 25%. I think it's remiss to say that you can tear up, you know, 15 acres and not have some consequences. I understand that, you know, there's the RP agreement, but the original RP agreement is from 1994, you know, almost 20 years ahead of the comprehensive land use plan, and 30 years from now, and the plan hasn't been executed. So, you know, at some point, is it time to come up with another plan? And then that leads me to, you know, I'm not opposed to development out there, period. I mean, my main complaints are, you know, what are we doing about the stormwater and the habitat type stuff and the density? I think the density is excessive. You know, I looked on a couple of websites today. I mean, is there even a demand for 207 apartment units in the city of Cedar Falls? Looking on 2 different websites today, Zillow and apartments.com. One said there's 170 available units I could rent like right now. The other one said there are 400 units that are available for rent right now. I'm not saying that we're not growing and doing other things, but 207 units in one spot, 467 parking spots in one spot is just a lot. And one other comment that I noticed from Thomas's description and looking through the packet, there's a discussion about density. I believe 11.2 units was thrown out as the current density. The actual information submitted by the applicant in the packet indicates the density as being 13.65 units because they subtracted out the 2.33 acres that they're hoping to use for commercial development at the north end of the site. So 13.65 exceeds the 12 that's in the comprehensive plan. I'd like to see something, you know, much less than 12, but I also understand that, you know, you got a developer who sunk a bunch of money in this land, and the only way he gets it out is by stacking units, and density is king. You know, I'd like to hear from the developer. You know, I mean, he's out of Utah. Does he have a vested interest in the development of the community, or does he have a vested interest in stacking units in there to make a business run, which I can understand that as well, but I don't have to support sense now. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Is there a traffic study that could be added to a packet for that area?
We certainly can provide the traffic study
Okay.
for you if you're interested.
Okay. Does anyone else from the public like to come up and speak? Name and address for the record, please.
Taner Tüken, 218 Winding Ridge Road. And I'm not going to mention many of the things Tom mentioned, but on the density, I just want to bring a different perspective. And just on the west side, there's a Winding Ridge neighborhood, and it is a 20 acres with 20 residential properties. So it is a 1 unit per acre, a low density. From a city planning perspective, it is desired not to bring a high-density neighborhood just next to, adjacent to a low-density neighborhood. It should be some transition. I mean, Thunder Ridge apartment area is already a high-density neighborhood. So, I mean, is a Winding Ridge residence, I don't think that we are not opposing a residential development area in this area, but it should be some kind of proportionally transition. I mean, you don't want to build a 10 unit per acre density, more than 10, more than 11, next to a very low density neighborhood. It should be a gradual transition to the adjacent Thunder Ridge high density neighborhood. So, I mean, if the developer is presenting us with a lower density neighborhood development plan, like 2 to 3 to 4 units per acre with the sufficient plan to address the wetland. I don't think that anybody will be opposing from the Thunder Ridge, from the Winding Ridge neighborhood. Just wanted to make that relative comparison.
Okay, thank you. Can staff address the density of that proposed versus, I guess, the regulation and the zoning?
So
We had two speakers bring up density, and the first speaker had brought up that he thought it was actually higher than we were calculating, or the staff was calculating it. And just can you familiarize everyone on how that works?
So the RP zone has a lot of flexibility because it's a planned development. So it doesn't have a lot of specific requirements, but it has the maximum density allowed in an RP zone is what's allowed in the R4 zone. So the R4 zone allows one unit per 850 square feet of lot area. So the RP or the R4 district would be considered a high density residential district. So you have the RP standards that were in place in 1994, of course, when this was rezoned to RP. Then you had the comprehensive plan that was adopted in 2012, which designated this area as medium density, which would be then considered when you're rezoning to RP, but this area is already zoned RP. So what we looked at with the staff report is looking at the standards in the RP zone and what's allowed in the RP zone since it's already there, and calculated that. The standards also say in the code that you have to use the entirety of the land area that's zoned RP in your calculation of the density. So we use the entirety of the RP area. RP areas can include a small amount of of commercial, but it specifically says in the code that you calculate the density based on the whole area. So that's how we calculated and came up with that density allowance. Now that's also including the area that they're asking to rezone. So it made the area larger. So then, of course, the units per acre went down compared to what they had before. So that's just the numbers and how they worked.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
In regards to the density, we talk about units per acre, and in this plan, I don't know if it's far enough along with that, is it every unit counts as 2 bedrooms, every unit counts as 4, 1? Just thinking about the number of people that might reside in an area, not just the number of units. How does that get figured out?
So the density calculation is just per units, and so it doesn't go down to that level of the number of people living here, because of course that can fluctuate over time. And it's certainly a valid question to ask. And this is a planned development, and they're asking to amend the planned development, so those questions are up for discussion. And that's why it's at the Planning and Zoning Commission, because it's a discretionary review. So certainly something to discuss.
Okay. And I know the ultimate goal of this, or the recommendation for today, is to set a public hearing for next meeting. So maybe that information could be included from the developer, or however we could have that information before a decision is made.
So I'm sorry, I'm confused about which specific information we are asking for then?
Would we be able to know like the planned number of, I don't know, maybe bedrooms in all these units, or I don't know if I caught that in the packet, to give us some sort of idea of how many people we would be talking about?
Yeah, I thought that was in there, but.
I very well might have missed it too.
Okay. If not, we can provide it.
Okay. Is that?
Yeah, it was, excuse me. It was shown on the RP plan, the number of units of 1 and 2 units. I don't know if there were any 3-bedroom units, but it talked about those, and then the parking is based upon the number of bedrooms.
So that should be on the plans that you have.
I'll try and look at it. It was 77 pages this time, so
Yeah.
did a little skimming.
Okay. Thank you. More public comment? Name and address, please.
Yes, Mark Boss. I'm at 810 Juanita Avenue, which is in the community just north of the proposed area to be developed. And I've never done this before, and I'm basically was asked to come here today, and some things that pop into my head, and I want to thank Mr. Nagel for bringing up a lot of the things that will directly affect us north of First Street. We live around the unnamed lake that's over there. That's a man-made lake. But when you think about what that wetland does, it acts as a buffer for all the watershed that comes from that Birdsall watershed area. And as it comes through underneath the highway, it feeds directly into our lake. So heavy rainfalls push a lot of water through there. So when I think about if we're going to have, I hear 6 acres of concrete put in, is that the water flowing off that concrete, is that going to go into the city storm sewer, or is that going to be pushed down into this tributary, this waterway that's going to push that volume into our lake? That's just going to increase it by more. You know, you think about what a wetland does, it may be not doing what everybody thinks it should in terms of filtration, but it is acting as a buffer for our lake. And when we get heavy rains, we get a lot of debris that floats down through there. I've seen pallets floating in our lake. And the concern would be if there's that much more water coming through there between First Street and the actual where the water comes into our lake, there is a winding waterway that is basically just black dirt. So the more volume of water you push through there, it's just going to push more silt into our pond. And the association is about 21 homes around the lake, and we pooled together about $400,000 a few years ago, and we hired PCI to come in, and we drained the lake, we excavated it, and we created a usable lake again for our kids and our grandkids. And we would like to see that continue. And the continued high flow of water, especially if we're going to have all this concrete in there, is just going to create more erosion. It's going to fill our lake right back in. So everything that Mr. Nagel talked about directly affects us just to the north of First Street. So that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much.
I would like to find out if that water is going to go into a storm sewer or if it's going to be pushed into the waterway and on down into our lake.
Can we have staff explain water mitigation for development?
I would ask the engineer of record to maybe explain how they're planning to do that. We don't have detailed stormwater plans yet because this is just a master plan level. The subdivision, when they submit subdivision plans, they'll have to show how they're managing their stormwater on site and how they've sized it to meet the city requirements. But maybe Wendell has already done a little bit of that preliminary work.
Okay, so the requirement is that anything that gets paved will be detained. That includes Lake Ridge Drive, let's see, yeah. It used to be Lakeview. I've been at this so long, it used to be called Lakeview. Lake Ridge Drive, all the water that runs off of there will be detained in a detention basin. All the water that comes off any of the parking lots, the house tops or the apartment tops, all will go into a detention basin and be detained, released at, I believe it's the 5-year storm now. I don't know, that was changed with some state regulations. But so anyway, that will all be controlled. The only thing we won't be controlling is the stuff that comes from south of our property. That will just basically end up going through because we aren't allowed to touch the stream, so that's just going to travel through as it did. So the stuff that's like up by 4th Street and all that comes down along Crescent Drive and that's just going to flow through the project in the existing stream bed. But any improvements will be detained.
Okay. So, all right, thank you. Yeah, just to clarify that any development that happens, they have to be able to manage any water and release it over, it's either a 2 or 5 year period out of a retention pond. So that's a requirement for any commercial or residential for a while now. So any other public comment? Name and address, please.
Hi, Genevieve Schaefer, 602 Oak Park Boulevard, Cedar Falls. I have lived in the area for 15 years, and that area has always been vacant. I knew eventually that it would be developed, but I don't believe that the apartment complexes as proposed are going to be the best for the city of Cedar Falls right now and for the future of the city of Cedar Falls. To address a couple of the issues, my area in Oak Park and many of my neighbors, as well as people in the ridges, have actually lots of water issues. It's just something that we have dealt with. We've heard rumors that we have been built on streams, things like that over the years. If you're familiar with the Oak Park area, on the other side there is a ravine that does catch a lot of the stormwater. We have worked really, really hard, like my family and I have in our house, and so have many of our neighbors, to make improvements to our areas so we don't get water. We don't want to have another development come in and create additional issues that we have already spent a lot of time and money to mitigate. The other concern that I have is this residential complex is going to affect more individuals living in the area than just those on Winding Ridge. Many kids and walkers use the only crossing on First Street and Magnolia to get from the Ridges, Oak Park, North Highland, and even up by Shirley to go to school. In fact, the kids at Winding Ridge have to cross First Street to get to the sidewalk off of the Ridges so they can cross safely at the light, because there is no sidewalk in front of the proposed developmental area. With all of the changes in Cedar Falls that have happened in the last 30 years, the west side of town has expanded significantly. There has also been changes to First Street that I don't think that this plan addresses because of the traffic patterns, the removal of several stoplights, and the changes in speed limits. For the kids and the walkers that must travel from north side of First Street all the way up to Hanson and Holmes, they have to cross many different dangerous areas on a typical trek to and from school. Not only the 4 lanes of traffic on First Street, but they also must navigate the crossing on Whitetail, the 2 entrances to Fairway, the entrance to the senior apartments, and then there is another entrance that they have to navigate, as well as a 2-way intersection on Crescent, which is seeing increasing traffic because of the developments on Apollo. Because we are a community, we need to really take into consideration the safety and the lifestyle of the people who live in that area. Our neighborhood is more than just wetlands, it's more than just storm sewers. It's people who use and travel that area every day to get to work, to school, and we want to continue to be able to use it safely. I would ask that as the city considers this plan, they really look at how the increase in traffic is going to impact the kids and the walkers who have to cross First Street and get all the way up to Hanson and Holmes. Also, the drivers that are going to be going to the high school. How are the kids going to walk or bike safely to the high school? I would like to see maybe some discussion with the DOT about ways we could make that area safer, because there have been an increase in a number of accidents on First Street. Even at Union and First Street, there recently was a very, very serious accident. We are hearing about more accidents and more near misses on a daily basis. And the fact that there is only one safe crossing is very, very concerning as a parent and a resident. I also would really like the city to take a look at the most recent housing assessment needs plan. I believe it was done in like 2022, 2023. We have a lot of apartment complexes in Cedar Falls. We have a lot of apartments for college kids, for young professionals. They've been developed all over the city, on the south side, on downtown, things like that. Does this apartment complex really meet the needs of that housing complex, or sorry, of the housing plan? If it is not going to add value to the city and to meet the needs of the people who benefit from housing in the city, why are we just going to add more apartment complexes that are going to be at market rent rate? Because that is not what the city needs. The city needs more accessible housing and more housing that is affordable. This is a 3-story building. Are they accessible? Are there going to be elevators? Or is it just going to be stairs? How many of these units are going to be handicap accessible? In that area in Cedar Falls, there is a lot of individuals who are, I'm going to say, aging in place. Maybe they want to downsize, but stay close to their families. We need to have apartments that can help people age in place safely. Or we also need to have apartments that can help individuals with disabilities live and participate in their communities. So as you guys consider the future of this proposal and the future of many other proposals, I hope that you guys would take into account the areas around it, the residents that live in those areas, so that you can make an impact on the housing and the residents of Cedar Falls that will make this area a safe and sustainable place to raise our kids for the next 30 years. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Anyone else from the public like to speak? Hi, name and address, please.
Pete Reed, 3105 Northridge. I won't take up too much time. I'd like to echo most of what people have said already. I agree with pretty much everything that's been said. I would like to bring up one issue that maybe hasn't been stressed, which is the aesthetics of the neighborhood. Definitely not the highest priority, I'm sure, anyone on the council or maybe even in the room now, but when we disturb the aesthetics, we compromise the quality and the character of a neighborhood. And unfortunately, the negative consequences of that don't become apparent until sometimes decades later. I've lived all over the country, and sometimes what seems very palatable, attractive, and very profitable early on is not so profitable and attractive 5, 10, 20 years down the road. The second thing I'd like to mention is just to maybe reiterate some of the concerns about the runoff. My property borders that stream pretty much more than any other property in the neighborhood. And I can say that around springtime, that little stream becomes like a miniature river, and it overflows the banks by a good 30 feet right onto my backyard. Luckily, I haven't had any flooding, but it's significant, and I sort of shudder to think what would happen if that stream is compromised or destroyed, plus all the greenery or most of the vegetation is removed. I mean, we live significantly below grade as compared to that area. And I think there would be a lot of potential for flood damage and expensive property loss. The last thing I'd mention is I understand policy and law and code, can be bent and modified, addended, amended, but in considering this, if we're not going to follow the intent and the spirit of code and policy, then what's the use of having it? It's really just words. I'll finish up by just asking the petitioner 2 questions. Are you aware of any plans from the developer as to the level of rent? Is this more for younger people, retirees? Is it subsidized? What is the approximate rent that the developer had in mind? And the second thing I'd ask is, could you elucidate on the the border on the west side of the property that abuts our neighborhood. I know you had mentioned some pine trees and maybe some noise barriers. Could you maybe detail that in a little bit greater detail? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Anyone else from the public like to speak? Name and address, please.
Yes, name is Cameron Lee. I live at 220 Winding Ridge Road, so I'm basically at the opposite end of Pete. One of the major concerns that that we have there is, and I know you've probably never been there, but as you kind of traverse the neighborhood from Pete's house, where he's basically kind of maybe even sub-level to that stream, at the very end where I'm at the top of that neighborhood, there's actually about a 15-foot elevation change between the back of my yard and the top of the property line. That whole area back there is wet constantly. Doesn't matter. I could go back there and dig a hole in the ground right now, and it's going to be full of water. And so, you know, kind of share a lot of the same water concerns that a number of the other residents share, maybe for slightly different reasons. And then the other main concern that I have is because of an elevation change, you're now proposing to put a 3-story. There are actually 3 31-unit apartments that will be essentially kind of on top of that hill. There is no size fence that you can build that is going to keep all of those residents from staring into my backyard. I have small children, as most people's small children do. They love to run around naked. Not a lot I can do about it. And so, you know, I want to make sure that we're, you know, again, kind of taking the aesthetics into the safety, the privacy, and kind of the one last comment that I would have is, you know, the city code has been kind of referenced a couple times. I think it's, you know, 20-D or 6-D. I would kind of ask if, because we have destroyed the wetlands ourselves through not being able to mitigate different sewer leaks or things of that nature, does that mean that gives us the right to destroy it? So with that, thank you.
All right, thank you. Before we move on, Wendell, could you address the questions about the apartments coming in, and also any mitigation or what you do with the streamline that backs up to the Winding Ridge neighborhood?
Okay, specifically, what question do you want?
Now I got to repeat those. I guess we'd start with the question on the people that back up the stream.
Okay.
What are you going to do as far as screening to try to protect them?
Well, if you look at the, can you pull up the site plan? If you look at the site plan, basically by the time we get to the north end where the stream is, there really isn't any, the site plan that has the buildings and such. There aren't any buildings up there further north, so that will be pretty much untouched. Just thinking out loud, I can talk with the gentleman that lives on the north side of First Street by Ulrich Pond. There's a possibility that we could do something maybe to trap sediment there, but there again, we have to be very careful because there's only a certain amount of linear feet of stream that we can impact. But I could maybe see that we could put some sort of a structure up there that would slow the water down enough and make like a siltation basin, but that's going to depend on what the Corps is going to allow us to do. So,
okay.
And then as far as the height of the buildings and up on the slope, the top of the hill, I don't have anything with contours here, but the top of the hill is about where the most southwesterly building is, and that will be cut down into the hill a little bit, and then the other two, the reason they're angled the way they are is to match the topography of the side of the hill. Otherwise, if you try and put a 30-unit building going that way, you've got like a 15-foot retaining wall. So we basically built it into the slope of the hill. And the houses on the back side of that on Winding Ridge, in their backyard, they've got about a 6 or 8 foot incline up there. So they'll have that natural berming effect. And then on the other side, we'll be going down to match where the fire lane goes through there, and then the building will be beyond that. So, but yeah, you're not going to hide a 3-story building. It just can't be done.
Okay. And I know you're the developer here and not the landlord, but can you address any?
I don't
about
really
the
have any idea on rents and things.
Okay. All right, thank you. Is there anyone else from the public who'd like to come up and speak?
So I am Atul Patel, the CEO, president, owner, operator of the Open Door Hospitality in town. I live in 307 Winding Ridge Road. I am, for years, have come to many meetings up here. It was all about development. Development is good, it's great for the city. For the first time, I'm here to speak few words against this development. Everything has been told by everybody about mitigation, about wetlands. I have in fact worked on the wetland mitigations. There are very few good quality wetlands are left in the community. Those are there for a reason. It's not man-made, it's naturally made. It's there for a reason, and we are disturbing it, making it all happen. All the development comes at a cost, and unfortunately, this is one of the last wetlands available in that area that is full of flora, fauna. A lot of species lives in there. It has a lot of drainage issues. It's a green space. It's just the barrier between a residential and a commercial. Not for the 2.5 acres or whatever the tract it is. If you cross it, it's all commercial. And then if you cross this way, it's all residential. Like everybody said, we live in a community which has got acres of land and the lots, and we have lived peacefully. A lot of kids. We are a very kid-friendly place. I think my development has got 20 plus young kids from this age to this age. I have two boys here. They are 20. They're grown up now, 26 and 28. But the big thing is, in my view, a mitigation should be done on the wetlands where it's needed. So just for my example, I did build a Holiday Inn Hotel, an event center in Cedar Falls. It's an industrial park. 40 acres of land I had it. There was about an acre, quarter of an acre, like half an acre of mitigation space. It's industrial park. Nobody had any reason to not mitigate it. It made sense to go to the bank, do whatever, but using these wetlands for a bank somewhere out there, how can a resident like me enjoy the wetlands, or even the location that's enjoying the wetlands, how can you bank it somewhere else when you're residing at where you reside for a reason? So a lot of people told about quality of life, safety, experience. Truly, from bottom of my heart, I feel like I'm there. I'm blessed to be there just because where I'm staying, where I'm seeing the sunrise, sunsets, all the birds, everybody's there. And then just to see a pine tree is what I heard. A pine tree is a barrier between us and a 3-story building. How tall can a pine tree grow? How can we just wake up in the morning in our backyard and we are seeing 3-story apartment, a line of those? How can you force a 2.5 acre land with 200 plus units? And why are we doing this for 30 plus years? I mean, I hear the year 71, 94, a lot of things have changed. Those communities were not there. I mean, my community, I think I saw 2007 embedded in the entrance of the parking lot. So it's all newer communities. We have grown. We are there now. That was not there before. But why are we constantly, every 5-6 years, we have to come to the council? Why are we taking this time? Why are they forcing this multi-story project? I don't understand it. We have lots of land. I'm not against the project. Have them put 200, 300, 500, even 1,000 unit projects somewhere else in Cedar Falls. Why there? And that's, I don't understand. Why they're forcing it every so often because somebody bought a land, then somebody else bought a land. This person in Utah or I don't know who the new owners are, they don't live in my neighborhood. And I just want to make sure that before you guys make any decisions on changing the zoning, because once you change the zoning, we are at mercy of another meeting, a council member. Now we have to educate all the council members. None of the council members lives in my neighborhood. None of you lives in my neighborhood. So I strongly invite all of you. I know very familiar faces up here. Just come one day, spend 1 hour. I will invite you everybody. Just see from our point of view what this development is proposing and what is going to affect, how is going to affect. Just being clear, forget about mitigation, forget about anything else but the quality of life. I want you to see how your kids would feel, how the safety, how the traffic will work, how there's no barrier. How can my backyard become a parking lot? I mean, I can see cars. I mean, a pine tree is not going to work. We need a green zone, and there has to be a transition. I think going like west from the Walgreens and all that, we have still a tract of commercial land that is suitable for, but we need the space because other than that, how can you stop other developments from encroaching into developments like us and north, south, east, west? I mean, we have Cedar Falls. It's not Cedar Falls dedicated to the 2.5 acre or to the tract. I mean, invite this business to somewhere else. Tell them to relocate somewhere else, but why affect so many people, so many lives? Is all. I mean, I'm not following whatever they already said, but I'm just talking about quality of life, experience. If that apartment comes in, I don't even know I'm going to be staying there anymore or not. And if I don't stay there, I'm not living in this town either. So a lot of we are trying to have a population growth. We want to have good people trying to be happy. We have so much trails. We have so much quality. We talk about quality of life all the time. Cedar Falls is great at that. I tell all my clients, I tell all my customers to stay in Cedar Falls. I bring my GMs to come to Cedar Falls just because it's quality of life. But then when my quality of life gets disturbed and my neighbors disturbed, then how can I speak in front of people? Because, you know, it's a single decision that city has to make it. I'm all about growth. I also understand growth is taxes, everything is there, but why force a project when there is other options available? And if they can just relocate this project somewhere else where it's more meaningful, not affecting that many people, I would really appreciate it. It's a thought. Because once you pass this thing up, then we're at the mercy of council members, and none of the council members, I don't know what they're going to, once they vote, we are done. And then we cannot undo it. So I really, really sincerely have you guys rethink. You're all invited to come to our neighborhood. We'll be more than happy to show you guys around. We can walk to these wetlands, we can walk to this bordering, we can walk, everything that is being shown on the drawing. And I want you guys to not look at the drawing, come to our community and see for yourself what the drawing is all about. That's all I have to say. Thank you for listening.
Thank you very much. Does anyone else like to speak? All right. I see no one that wants to come up. I appreciate everyone coming out tonight to speak. It is very important to get your input on decisions like this. And we're not voting on anything tonight except to create the public meeting on this, which will be the next. Wendell, you can, come on up.
I just have a few comments. I guess along with the history there, I also was involved in the rezoning and the platting of Winding Ridge Estates. And I looked through those documents again today, and it was noted just east of there in 2003 when we ran this through that was RP zoned. Now, the people that built there and bought there may not have looked online to see what the zoning was in their own backyard to realize that was already set aside for 216 units. But now it's like, oh my God, the sky is falling. Well, zoning has two purposes. One, to protect the people adjacent to something, but it also has to guarantee the rights that are already on the books. So these people that have invested money in this property, it was not cheap. Like I say, there's been a series of owners. They've all been outside of Cedar Falls, and now it comes where we have somebody that's actually willing to put up the money to put in Lake Ridge Drive and infill this 30-some acres that's been basically an eyesore in Cedar Falls since the 70s. And so now, are we going to let the fact that nobody knew, nobody wanted to know what was going to happen there, are we going to let that change and take away the rights that the people that own this have to develop it? I think that needs to be considered as well. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Wendell. Thank you, everyone, once again, coming out to voice your concerns or support. It's very important for us making decisions. So tonight we are...
Could I ask a final question?
Yeah.
I'm going to assume that the 467 parking slots are with the existing code. Is there a blended code we could use with how we are currently requiring parking downtown that may decrease the amount of pavement we need to consider in that. You know, as we look at like some of the State Street developments, there's lots of parking there that is not used. And, you know, it's wasted pavement.
So that would take a code amendment to the zoning code to change the parking requirements. And certainly that's something that could be done, but you know, that's a larger discussion because it would change the parking requirements across the city. And so needs to be carefully considered and certainly can be a topic of discussion, but we can't just use something else for this project right now. Yeah.
All right, thank you. Any more questions, staff? Is this a voice vote, roll call vote? Does it?
You don't need to vote at all. We'll
Okay.
just, you can just state whether you want to set the public hearing,
Yeah.
make a motion to set the public hearing.
Yeah, I make a motion to set a public hearing for the rezoning for October 23rd
Yes.
of next meeting, 2 weeks from now. Is that all I need to do, or we don't
Got
need
a
to vote?
second? We got a second?
I'll second that motion.
Okay.
Okay, and then all in favor say aye.
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 All right, that motion would carry.
What does that actually mean? Sorry.
Uh,
For the non-commission.
Can you
Okay.
explain?
So basically, for the Planning and Zoning Commission, it'll be a similar meeting to what we had tonight. So everybody's welcome to come back. Anybody else that wants to come to the next meeting and make additional comments can certainly do that. The purpose of this original meeting is to get questions out there and questions from the commission. Now, the commission has asked for us some additional information on the traffic study, I understand, the environmental report, and we're happy to provide, and maybe the applicant can provide additional answers to questions. That way, we've got a bunch of questions here tonight, so maybe at the next meeting, some more details can be discussed about those questions.
Would there be a vote then at that meeting to?
It's really up for the commission whether it's ready for a vote at the next meeting.
Yeah, it kind of, yeah. I mean, we could pass it in one meeting, or it may go into multiple meetings. Really depends.
So it's not like a 3-reading type deal or anything?
I don't believe there's a requirement.
Well,
So
we
the-
move it to council.
Okay.
We don't approve it. We move it to council.
We just make a suggestion to council on how to approach it, but they are ultimately the deciding factor.
Thank you for the
Yep,
clarification.
yep. All right. Is any commission updates for tonight?
I just want to make note, a couple people have reached out to me. Just note that the November and December meetings are on the 1st and 3rd Wednesdays of the month instead of the 2nd and 4th Wednesdays like we typically do. And we shifted those to avoid the holiday weeks of Thanksgiving and Christmas. So we're fortunate to be able to do that this year, and I believe next year because we have 5 Wednesdays in October. So we still would have 2 weeks between meetings. And so we'd be able to keep that 2-week schedule. But just please note those on your calendars because it's a little bit, 1st and 3rd Wednesdays instead of 2nd and 4th.
And just so noted that I have already had a vacation scheduled for the first week to avoid the second week of December. So
yeah.
we'll be out of the country.
You got to change that. All right, so I entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second?
We got a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
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 All those opposed? All right, the meeting is adjourned, and everyone have a great evening. Thank you.